Hi, everyone. Welcome, East Coast, West Coast, and everywhere in between and beyond. We're so excited to have you here today. My name is Rachel Hutchison. I'm a senior associate with NHSA. I work for the Academy team, and a lot of the work that I do has to do with instructional programs. So, things for teachers and instructional staff. And today we're going to talk about one of our favorite subjects, which is tackling challenging behaviors, but not in the ways that you might expect. So today we have with us the fabulous Dr. B, whom most of you know from the Office of Head Start, where she served as the director. She's also a very experienced um, public school teacher and administrator and has done one-on-one coaching and just about everything you can imagine. So we're going to learn a lot from her today. We also have with us Hayes Greenfield, who is the creator of the Creative Sound Play Method. And he is going to talk about how we can use things like sound and silence to provide more insight into your classroom and learning about your students. So we're very excited to have him here with us today. Um, so much to learn that I'm just going to get myself right out of the way. We're going to jump right in, everybody. I just want to make sure that you are aware that this is a series. So if you missed our first one about tackling challenging behaviors with joy, that is recorded and on our website. So feel free to go back, watch that, share that. Really great information there from Dr. B and Nick the Music Man. And we will have more coming up come January. We're going to have several more of these sessions, so make sure they're on your calendar. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll answer them as best we can. Dr. B's real good about paying attention to what you're asking and responding in kind. And if you have questions after the fact, you can always reach out to me and we will do our best to answer them for you. Okay? So without further ado, let's talk about insight. What does that mean? What does that look like in early education environments? And what the heck does that have to do with tackling challenging behaviors? Dr. B, take it away.
All right. Super excited to be here. I love, love, love these webinars. We've really creatively linked words that we think matter with skills that make a difference in the classroom. And I also love looking at the chat to see where everyone's from. It's so exciting. All over the country. We've got people all over the place. Fantastic. So my question for you, and I'm going to ask you to use the chat for this just so that we can have a little conversation, is what is insight? That's my first question. Just pop in the chat what comes to your mind when I say, what is insight? What do you think? This is going to go fast. I'm going to have to read really fast, I can tell. What is insight? Aha moments. Love it. Thoughtfulness, understanding, the know, awareness. Okay, you got it. We all know what insight is. You guys are clearly a gifted group. All right, here's my next question. Can insight influence behaviors in young children? Bigger question. How insight influence behavior? In other words, how could it support you in the classroom? I'm going to sit here and see if I can read a couple of answers. We'll see. Helps reflect, self-regulation, background knowledge on the child, your own insight, love it. Making connections, improve relations, and gives ideas on how to handle self-regulation and individualization, understanding how best to interact. So your own insight. I'm going to shift this a little. I'm going to push you a little bit. How does the insight of a child help? How do you use insight with children to help influence behavior? Understanding the why of the behavior, knowing children first, problem solving. We're getting closer. Background knowledge for strategies. So what I want to talk to you about today is a piece of Trust First that is included in the 10 skills that we teach in this class that is centered around asking questions. It's all, oh, this is it. Where's Kay? Kay Lynn, having them think and problem solve. Standing ovation to Kay. This is what we're getting at. We're trying to use the art of question asking to allow children to solve their own problems. Because when we put the power in the hands of the child, actually, when we put the power in the hands of the learner, it changes the culture of the classroom and it influences behavior with that. And it's a side product. It's not your main goal. It just happens to be the side product. And I want to just share with you that what I just did with you is exactly what I'm talking about. So I could have started by telling you what insight is. And I could have started by linking this to behavior, but I asked you instead. And I want you to just reflect for a minute about how that changed the way you're listening to this webinar. That you're an adult, that's going to be a different experience for you than a 3-year-old, but it isn't all that different in terms of attentiveness and empowerment. So that's my little tidbit of an opener about asking questions. We're going to talk about the power of asking questions to build trust with children and build positive behavior in the classroom. And that's my contribution today. And when we come back, I'm going to give you some skills around that. I'm not going to give you that yet. So we'll wait. I'm going to turn it over to my good friend Hayes, and he's going to share with you from his perspective on what he teaches in terms of behavior management and how that can support you through insight.
Okay, Deb, you are amazing. It is wonderful to hear you talk about this. And Rachel, it's great to be here. And all of you out there, you are my heroes. Okay, and what I'm going to share with you is something that is all about questions, and it's about sound, and it's about making sounds. And it has nothing to do with music. This has to do with listening, which is as soon as you start to listen, you start to enhance your inhibitory control, your executive function skills. And the thing that is so beautiful that children love to do is that they love to actively listen. You can listen in the classroom to the sounds of the lights buzzing. Are people in the hall? Is there a leaf blower outside? Is it loud or is it quiet? Is it loud or is it quiet? Is it long or is it short? Is it high? Are the birds high in pitch? Tweet, 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 tweet. And is the dog outside barking low? Roof, roof, roof. Pitch, volume, and duration. So important. And it's about sound. Those are the basic elements of sound. And when you start, what's the one thing that every child absolutely loves and adores doing? Making sound, whether they're alone or in a group. And as soon as you start to think about types of sound, and when I think about this and I think of insight, your word, the word of the day, insight, I think of license and opportunity. Because I think that as a teacher, you provide your students with the opportunity to listen to sound. And then you provide them the opportunity to make sound, and to make sounds, quiet sounds and loud sounds, and long and short and high and low. And so sound becomes this incredible thing. If you want to work with it with counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you do this tomorrow with your students and you say, we're going to count to 10, I want to go 1, down low, long, 1, 2, 3, 4. You will see how incredibly focused and engaged your kids will become. And this is just one simple sound activity. So I think of it as license and opportunity because it provides children. And we're going to talk about stories later, right? Or should I go into one now?
Let's give them a teaser of your story, Hayes. And we'll bounce back to Dr. B for a second.
Providing silly sounds for children to make helps nonverbal kids communicate.
Ooh, okay. I'm thoroughly anticipating this.
Adrienne voted for the story, so she's ready. She is ready. Okay, so I'm going to focus on what it means to use insight or question asking to create an environment in your classroom that empowers children to engage, which ultimately will clean up tons of challenging behaviors. because challenging behaviors tend to come from a place of confusion or frustration and lots of other things like that. So, and I could do this with you all day. So I'm gonna pull out a couple, and we'll just start with something very basic, like a puzzle table. And you've got a small group at a puzzle table. Each kiddo has a wooden puzzle, and one of the children has a piece of the edge puzzle, but it's flipped. So he's trying to cram it into the space, and all he needs to do is turn it, but he doesn't see that those edges are going to line up. I'm going to pick like something really basic for you here. Use the chat. How do you use questioning to support that child before he gets frustrated? See what we have. Prompts, yes. Let me see if I can read some of these. Ask, something happened. Ask a question, something happened. What else can you try? What else can you try? I wonder what we can do. Can we turn the piece in another direction? It's pretty leading. I think they can do it. Could we make that question a little more open-ended? Open-ending questions. Thank you, Madeline. The idea, as you all are seeing, what is another way it might fit? Awesome. What is another way it might fit? What we tend to do as teachers, out of the best intentions, is to give kids answers to everything. We want them to be successful, and we're really good at helping them to be successful. Oftentimes, and this is, not picking on anybody, I'm just going to give you this strategy that you can use, but oftentimes we'll hand over hand turn the puzzle piece, and then they put it in and they go, yay, and it feels like we've supported them, but we haven't empowered them to find the solution themselves. The more we empower, the more we are arming them with those self-regulation skills that you all were talking about in the chat. And it's not about that puzzle moment. You can deal with that. It's about the moment that comes later and building that resilience. So more questions that you can ask during academic work, fewer sentences, more questions. I used to tell teachers, challenge yourself to spend small group time and only ask questions and see if you can do it. It's super hard. You may not be able to do it the whole time, but try to teach through questioning versus telling. The more you do that, the more engaged kids are, the fewer challenging behaviors you're going to have. It's just the reality of human behavior. Can you move it differently? Yes. Can you move it differently? And just get them to think about it. And you can use this for every academic thing that you teach. Math, letter recognition, writing, all of it. Just try to stop yourself if you're going to use a declarative sentence and see if you can turn it into a question. So that's an academic approach to creating a classroom where curiosity is king and you aren't in control. You're not trying to control everything. So you're empowering children, and you will notice that their behavior will just naturally be different. Now, I'm going to give you another opportunity to help me with this one. Let's go to more of a behavioral situation. And we have children who are refusing to do something that you need them to do. So I'm going to give you some questions that you can put in your back pocket and take home with you tonight. And they go like this. What are you supposed to be doing? What are you doing? And when are you going to start doing what you're supposed to be doing? It is a series of questions that you can ask that will help kids to connect to what they are supposed to be doing. So you are going to circle time and you have a child who's sitting at a table and isn't getting up. What is your typical way of approaching that child? Put in the chat what you would typically tell a child who is not coming to circle time in your best moment. It doesn't have to be your worst moment. It can be your best moment. What do we usually say to kids when they're like, we're all going to circle time and you've got one kiddo who's in the chair? It's time to go to circle time. Sit down. Some folks are putting questions in there. That's great. Come join us on the carpet. Your friends are at circle time. I need you to be. When you are ready, come on over. Okay, I'm going to address some of those. And don't take any of this as criticism. It's just a different way of thinking about this. A couple of things. When we demand, which is come to circle time, we're especially with children who tend to be less cooperative. We create conflict because now there's that feeling of push. And you'll notice that like when I was a kid, teacher could have told me to do anything and I would have done it. I was just such a compliant kid. But when we have challenging behaviors, they're typically children who have a harder time being told what to do. And so they will push back at come to the carpet. Oh, that's what you want me to do. I'm going to do what I need to do so I can show you that I'm in control. That tends to be what happens. So that can create a conflict. Sometimes we think we're being super nice and we say, please come to circle time. That translates to begging kids to do stuff that they should be doing anyway. Please should be for favors, not for something they should be doing anyway. Sometimes we will call out a child like, look how nicely Mary's coming to circle time, and thinking that we're complimenting another child and going to entice or almost like bait the child to come over. Again, with a really non-compliant kid, that tends to backfire, not work. When we use questions, we leave it up to the child. And that series of questions works because it gets to that bottom line. You can use other questions too. But if you say, what are you doing? I'm sitting at my desk or I'm sitting at my table. What are you supposed to be doing? I'm supposed to be at circle time. When are you going to get started? That's a series of questions that you can ask a child that has fairly rational answers. And usually they will answer correctly and you can support them to get over to circle time. Some of the questions you all asked in the chat are great. Where should you be right now? What are we starting to do right now? Have them connect with the activity through questioning so that they can come to their own conclusion about the best place to be. And sometimes you are going to give them, you know your kids better than in a generic hypothetical situation. And you know some kids need more time. Some need to choose when to come over. And they like to come a little late, make a grand entrance. Some of those things aren't worth making a huge to-do. But as you're trying to run your classroom, one of the beauties about questioning, using questioning to inspire the behavior you want, isn't that it is, again, not just about that circle time moment. It's about building a culture in your classroom where you aren't walking around all day telling kids what to do. That's the difference. It's the difference in the feel and the tone when you start shifting control to the children and let them figure out what they're supposed to be doing and have some agency in that. As you get in a habit of being a questioner and not a demander or a beggar, you will create a culture in your classroom that just shifts. It's very nuanced. And some people will come in and say, what are you doing? How are you getting it to work this way? And it'll be very subtle, but it is something that children really, yeah.
So something that I wanted to talk about when you were talking about the puzzle, slapping it down, is it when, as a teacher, when you become aware of sound in the room and I guess have insight, like there's a teacher that I know, Jennifer, was talking about this, where a child couldn't get that puzzle piece in and got really frustrated with slapping on the table. And instead of being punitive, she slapped her hand down and got his attention. And all of a sudden, and then they started having a dialogue. He responded, and she did it again and got quieter. And then another teacher came by who was aware of sound and threw in a clap. And all of a sudden, the child was able to self-regulate. There was nothing said about being punitive or anything else. It was about just listening to the sound. The child was frustrated. She heard him slap the thing down, and then she just decided, I'm going to have a conversation with him with sound, with non-words, where that can be incredibly effective. You know, for example, what I was going to say earlier is kids who have language skills have trouble asking for what they need because the words are difficult in their heads. So they can be striking out and grabbing and being aggressive. And when a teacher gives a child opportunity to make funny sounds, you're giving that child license and creativity to think of it another way. And all of a sudden, her children who were being more aggressive stopped being aggressive and started making playful sounds, and were able to communicate their feelings and change the whole feeling of the room. The whole atmosphere in the classroom shifts. And it's about, for example, if a child's loud, and they come in, instead of saying, be quiet, you could say to them, hey, I like that sound. I bet you can't make that quiet. Oh, wow. Can you make it a little louder? Can you make it even louder? And what's happening then is that child is having the opportunity, because sound is immediate in its learning, it's immediate, to know that what they do matters, and that how they gain control and technique and ability to listen and listen to themselves, and social emotional learning. All of all of the executive function skills, SEL, mindfulness, the whole thing, all those words, because sound is collaborative in nature. And all of a sudden, children come in because they've had the opportunity to listen, like back when in the very beginning of the thing, about questioning what kind of sounds we're hearing. What are those sounds? Are they high? Are they low? Are they quiet? And then all of a sudden have the opportunity to make different kinds of sounds, to make loud sounds and quiet sounds. That 3-year-olds come into classrooms and have the mindfulness to say, it's too loud in here. Can we quiet down? And what they're really saying is that it's too loud. I can't focus. I want to learn. So it's about giving them the opportunity, the license to make different kinds of sounds, to interact with each other. It doesn't have to just be words. Clap. Quiet clap. You can't hear it because because the Zoom doesn't allow you to do this. It's very unfortunate. But when you start to engage with sound, which is new and nobody thinks about it, because when we're sound asleep, when we're asleep, we're sound asleep, right? So we're not thinking about sound, and sound is like most people think of sound as music, the sound of music. The hills are alive with the sound of music. No, the hills are alive with wind, with birds, with geese, with everything else. Has nothing to do with an orchestra up in the hills. And every teacher here, you are my heroes, and every one of you has the total ability to work with your children with sound. Loud sounds, quiet sounds, long sounds, short sounds, high sounds, and low sounds. And it's amazing that one of the things that children absolutely adore, like we know, they love to make sound. They plug right into it. It's in their DNA. It's part of being human. It's part of communicating. And when you do it, and when you invite your children to do it and talk about it and ask them what kind of sounds they were.
You know what I love about what you're saying, Hayes, is, and the reason we do these together is because these are intertwined skill sets. So what we're really both talking about is empowering children to be their own driver, right? So you're using sound to do that. Keep that tool in your back pocket. Keep some questions in your back pocket so that we don't do so much telling and begging, and we do more question asking. I want to address 2 questions in the chat really quick because I know we're coming down on time. I want to, the one that says, Deborah, thank you for this question. Some kids can't handle circle time. Let me be really clear. I use that as an example. It could be anything you need a child to do, line up to go outside, throw away their milk carton, whatever. The point isn't the activity, because you are going to have children for whom you're making exceptions and accommodations, and you should be doing that. I absolutely, if you've got a kiddo who doesn't like to sit on the floor crisscross applesauce, they stay in their chair, they still engage with circle time. It's not about coming to circle time. It's a strategy to use to inspire kiddos to do what you need them to do, rather than just telling them or begging them. So you just try the questioning, whether you use the 3 questions I gave you, what are you supposed to be doing? What are you doing? When are you going to get started? And then see if they can get that going themselves, or just some of the other questions in the chat here were really good, just basic. What are we supposed to be doing now? And let them answer. And then you can bring them along, and just pay attention to yourself and try to avoid the begging, which is the please, and the telling, which is the demand. And you might not feel like you're demanding because you're saying it so nicely, but when we use sentences that end in a period, that's declarative. You're telling someone to do something. When you use a question mark, they get to be part of the solution. And with what Hayes is suggesting with sound variations, you put these things together and you've got a really exciting day of all kinds of fun things you're doing. The other question that's in here that I really want to address, because this is standard for these kinds of things. People will say, well, what if, right? So Allison says, well, what if they say, I don't want to? Which I'm sure that your kids say all the time. I mean, of course they do. If they didn't say that, you wouldn't have an issue, right? I'm going to answer this a couple of different ways, and it's really not an escape. We have 4 minutes. I cover one skill in this webinar, and it's question asking. The Trust First 10 skills will address all of these things in depth. So I can't be too deep today. What I would say for today is, rather than think of all the scenarios where the questions aren't going to work, just try them and see where they do work. That's not going to work every time. You might ask a child, what are we supposed to be doing right now? And they look up at you and they say, I don't know. Or they might even say, I don't care. I don't care what we're supposed to be doing. I want to sit in my seat and I don't want to do what you want me to do. I mean, that could definitely happen. The idea isn't that I'm giving you a silver bullet for everything, but try it tomorrow in class when you've got a kiddo not doing what you need him to do, and just see what happens. Just experiment and watch the difference in the reaction with a question versus a beg or a demand. And then try some of these very sound activities that Hayes is talking about. These are just things to experiment with.
About dealing with sound, like you can say, okay, we're gonna count around the room, and you decide how you want to count. You can let them count. You can sing a song. Everybody can sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and decide, how do we want to do it? Do we want to do it? Somebody can raise their hand and lower their hand for volume and go twinkle twinkle, up and down. Twinkle twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are. And when you're giving your children that kind of opportunity to lead their other friends and their peers in making a song that they know, it's about empowerment. It's about self-esteem. It's about listening to each other. It's about empathy. It's about bringing your class together as an working ensemble so that they're all working with each other. And then all of a sudden they start listening to each other. It works. It helps teachers teach. It helps children be together. Sound is this unknown. It's never been. I want to thank the National Head Start Association for taking the risk with really jumping in on sound, because sound is profound and it's the most underutilized educational resource there is. It is phenomenal.
And you can learn so much more about it in Hayes's full class. It's always so hard for me.
Yes, that is true.
It's so hard to moderate these things, because I know both of these instructors could just go on, and all of it would be such rich content, but we promised you half an hour today. This has been recorded, so if you jumped in late and you want to watch the whole thing, it's going to be up on NHSA's website, along with our first webinar of this series, which was all about tackling challenging behaviors with joy. That was with Nick the Music Man. Highly recommend that you go back and watch that one too. Come back to these as often as you need to. Refresh these skills. Remember the questions. Think about the sound activities. And then if you really want to dive in deep, we've got a full Trust First class on NHSA's Academy, and we've got a course called Effective Transitions with Hayes, where he talks about using sound really strategically in those moments where you're going from activity 1 to activity 2, where we spend a lot of time in our early childhood classrooms, and making that a joyful, learning, insightful experience will make a huge difference in your classrooms, and we're ready and happy to teach that to you. So we hope that you'll join us in those classes. We also have a full classroom management credential, which includes a class with Nick the Music Man as well, and you can learn about how to keep control of music time and make that really joyful. So we hope that this was really a great session for you. It always is for me. I learned so much from both Dr. B and Hayes every time. So thank you so much both for being here with us today. Everybody go have a wonderful day. Enjoy those wonderful kiddos and be a wonderful you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.